On the behalf of Team Physio Inculcator, I would like to welcome you all in our today's session. This session would be taken over by our today's resource person, Dr. Jaspreet Singh Vij sir. Dr. Jaspreet Singh sir is having doctorate in physiotherapy. He is working as an associate professor in the University College of Physiotherapy at Baba Farid University of Health Sciences, Faridkot. Dr. Jaspreet sir has many awards and recognition for their name. Dr. Jaspreet sir has a well-known personality in the field of physiotherapy. He has a guide of numerous research scholar also, and he has been extensively working in the field of musculoskeletal rehabilitation. So, heartiest welcome to you, sir, on the board in the today's session. We are really grateful to you that you spared your precious time to share your knowledge with us. Today's topic is on the title Gait Re-Education in the Stroke Patient or Post-Stroke Hemiparetic Patient. Here, sir is going to talk about some evidence-based approaches as per the physiotherapist perspective. So I would like to welcome you all on the board. And sir, it is also a matter of honor and immense pleasure for us that various senior faculty members also joins us regularly for these sessions. Like there are few faculty members. They joins us from the Jamia Hamdard University, Jamia Hamdard Delhi. Dr. Kalpana Jutsi ma'am and Jiten Munjal sir from the Delhi. My own teachers, Dr. Harsh Rajdeep sir, Ritu Rajdeep ma'am, Charu Sharma ma'am. So we are having a lot of senior faculty members also here. They always continuously supports us and bless us. The K. Ganeshan sir, Arun Moji sir, so various other personalities who joins us. So we are grateful to all that you are sparing the time to extend your support to us. Thank you. Thanks to all. Again, heartiest welcome to you, Jaspreet sir. That we are really delighted and honored to have you with us. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Himanshu, for the inflated introduction. So I give my warm wishes to everybody who has joined to have a good discussion regarding this topic. So very good evening to everybody. And first of all, I would like to congratulate the Physio Inculcators group for having this platform where the knowledge is being shared digitally and to a large number of masses. So basically, our today's topic is gait re-education in stroke patients. And as we go further, we start, I will let you know why this topic only gait has been selected in the stroke, whereas in stroke we have upper limb dysfunction, the postural dysfunction, and then we have a lot of other areas to go for. So like gait is one of the main priority of every patient in stroke. So we'd like to start. So basically, as far as stroke is concerned, the time has changed. Earlier, it was considered a disorder of old age. Most of the people in their late 50s or 60s, they used to have a stroke. And their aim was also just to be independent, to be able to go to washroom, to take care of themselves. And that was just their main priority. But now age is not the criteria. Now we have the term called young stroke. Now theoretically, young stroke, if you go through the books, it denotes stroke less than 45 years of age, or a person having less than 45 years of age. If he suffers from stroke, we call it young stroke. But 45 again is too much age in this scenario. Now we have patients, as young as 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 28 years, and mid 30s. We are having a lot of patients nowadays. So it can happen to anyone at any age. And now we have more patients with young stroke, and that is more challenging. Why it is more challenging? Because as I told earlier, it was a considered disorder of old age. Above 60s, the main aim of the person or priority of the person is to just look after themselves, to just be independent in the areas, to just do their normal day-to-day course. But now, as we have a problem of young stroke, we have a patient with 35 years of age, 40 years of age who had a stroke. So, he wants to go back to his previous lifestyle as far as possible. He so that, he is not dependent upon others, cause or just, being independent in his areas is not now the criteria. Now his aim is to be as independent as possible as before. So as we all know, this is just a statistics. It is one of the leading cause of death around the world, and as we speak, it is claiming, or it claims a life every 6 seconds, and it is responsible for more deaths than the infectious diseases. And the number is, you just see the statistics, and they will keep on increasing with each year, and especially in developing countries. And we have more than half of the stroke patients who have some form of permanent disability. It means they will live with this disability throughout their life. And especially if we have a young stroke patient, a patient who suffered at 35 years of age, at 40 years of age, it means half of these patients will be having residual disability till throughout the life. And it is very difficult for them to cope in this competitive age. Everybody wants to go back to his previous occupation. Everybody wants to go back to his previous level of survival. And of course, it has reached epidemic proportion. Now, one thing I want to further share is that we are not giving stroke its due importance. We are, it is slowly and slowly rising to a very poisonous level. It is rising year by year. The death rate is also increasing, the disability rate is also increasing, and especially in the countries like India, developing countries, the annual incidence rate, which we call AIR, as well as prevalence, has increased to a tremendous level. And it is not given this statistics is not given that much importance throughout. And more than 15% population worldwide, they will have a stroke in their lifetime. Now, as far as India is concerned, I told you that more than 85% of stroke population, that burden is borne by low and middle income countries. Like India is basically considered as low income country. Other countries are also there, but more proportion is in India. And India accounts for more than 80% of all strokes. As the population is more, risk factors are more, medical care is not that much available, awareness is not that much available. So that accounts for the big problem. And the incidence rate in India is much higher than other developing countries. So on average, in these countries, in low and middle income countries, stroke occurs 15 years earlier. It means that if average age of stroke in developed nations is 45 or 55, in India it is 15 years earlier when compared to those countries. And if this trend continues, now this is the problem, we will have 23 million first ever strokes by 2030. And of course, it is one of the leading cause of long-term disability worldwide. And more than half, as we have discussed, more than half who survive the stroke survivors, they are disabled. And what is the factor which contributes to this disability? Impaired walking function. Now, if you see the psychological status of a stroke patient, a few minutes ago or a few hours ago, he's absolutely normal. He's doing his normal day-to-day activity. He's fully independent, and suddenly he gets bedridden. Suddenly he's dependent within a few minutes. And as 50% will always have some kind of residual disability, it always makes a person feels that he is dependent on the other if he is not able to achieve the previous level of independence. And this psychological status or this psychological illness develops more in young patients, because they have a very good lifespan in front of them, and they feel the difference between yesterday and today. I mean to say, when they were not having a stroke and when suddenly they had a CVA. So basically, this impaired walking function, it makes a person bedridden, disabled, and functionally impaired. Now, if you visit acute stroke patients, the first question they will be, when I will be able to walk. So the main thing the patient is concerned about is walking. The first question his caretakers or he will ask is, when I will be able to walk. Because walking function is directly related to the independence level. Whatever is the occupation of the patient, if his walking is not up to that level where he's able to do his, he justifies occupational levels, he will always feel disabled. And nowadays it is more important because earlier our aim just was to make him independent. Quantity was important. We just want the patient to walk to his washroom and come back. But now we have a patient with young stroke who want to be, same level as before, and who wants quality, or you can say the same level of quality which was earlier. So the primary concern of all these patients is to regain the ability to walk again independently, and that too with the same quality as it was before. So this concern is not only important for the patient, but even for the physiotherapist, because this ability to walk, and especially from qualitative aspect, it will determine whether the patient will go back to his previous level of occupation, whether he will be able to do all his activities as he was doing earlier. It is all dependent upon this ability to walk, or his walking level. So therefore, as soon as the patient starts weight bearing, what happens is our focus shifts to ambulation. Okay, so we are more concerned about his walking. We train him in various ways. Okay, and our main aim is to just make him walk, and then make him walk in a balanced way so that falls are not there. And therefore, this correction of gait pattern, or this gait training program, it occupies a major proportion of the time spent. But in stroke, we have postural dysfunction, we have balance problems, we have upper limb concerns also. Every patient is having their own different priority. So we have a lot to do, and we are just having 40 minutes, 45 minutes, or maybe maximum 1 hour with these patients. So if, let us suppose, 60%, 70% of time we spent in gait rehabilitation and 40% with upper limb or other things. So it means we need to have that 60% the best, so that we can say, okay, this patient needs this kind of gait rehabilitation program. It is best suited for him. Now, what is this best? That we are going to discuss today. Now, as I told you, despite its impact on the society, on the economy, this growing crisis, I mean to say this growing incidence of stroke, it has received very little attention to date. And by 2030, we will not have that much qualified professionals to deal with these things. So what are the therapies we are having now? By meaning therapies, we will be focusing just on gait rehabilitation therapies, which we can use in these patients, and we will speak what is the evidence behind them and how we can incorporate or have the best suited to our patient. So what are the main gait re-education interventions we are having? We have Bowath approach. We also call it MDT. Then we have Brunstrom movement therapy. We all know these names. Then we have PNF approach, then Wojda method, Carr and Shepherd approach. And we always use bits and pieces of these approaches. And maybe we use one approach in one patient for a particular period of time, and then we shift that kind of approach. Now we'll discuss what the evidence says, or how far these approaches are effective in a patient with stroke, especially with gait retraining. Now, coming first to Bowath entity, we will not go into detail the principles, because here we just speak on the evidence. The main aim of this technique is to inhibit the excessive tone and to stimulate the muscle activity if hypotonia is present. So basically, to decrease the abnormal tone as well as to facilitate the normal movement. That is the main aim of this approach. And we facilitate this normal pattern through hand-on techniques. And this approach, it remained a dominant approach in United Kingdom, in Canada, United States, Australia, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. And this approach is not only particularly used for gait re-education, it is used for upper limb also, for postural dysfunction also, for achieving balance reactions also. So it is a mixed approach, which is also used, or which is also beneficial in gait re-education, as well as other aspects of functional independence in stroke. Next, we have burst movement therapy. This approach is not that much used in comparison to other approaches. Its practice is less common. And here we use abnormal reflexes to obtain a normal movement pattern. And here we facilitate normal movement through reflex facilitation techniques and sensory stimulation. Then of course we have PNF. It is very widely recognized, but it is very rarely applied for stroke rehabilitation. And we use diagonal patterns, and we apply a lot of stimuli, tactile, visual, auditory, to have the desired movement. Then, of course, we have watched the method, but it was mainly used in children related to birth-related damage, especially in cerebral palsy. And here, basically, we stimulate the nerve endings at specific body key points to promote the development of physiological movement patterns. Then, of course, we have Carr and Shepherd approach. And here, basically, in Carr and Shepherd, we give sensory input to the patient.
Sir, there's a request. Can you please keep the mic closer to the mouth? The little bit.
Yeah, sure,
louder,
sure. Yeah, sure. I will speak louder, no issues.
Yeah.
So basically, now it is fine. I think now it is audible.
Now audible. It was already audible, but a little bit louder than it will be fine.
Yeah, sure. So basically, in this approach, we facilitate the movement if tone is less, if hypertonia is there, and then we decrease the, you can say we use inhibitory patterns if there is excessive tone, and then after applying the appropriate sensory inputs, we practice, and then we give the patient feedback, and with this, the patient improves. Then we have sensory integration approach, Ayer's method. Again, it is a kind of sensory integration therapy, and exercises are based on sensory feedback and repetition. Now, the problem is these approaches are very useful. They are, they make a patient independent, and they basically help him achieve his previous lifestyle. But these methods, they have not been specifically designed for gait recovery after stroke. Nor we use baits and paces, and we can use our innovation to have them for gait re-education. But traditionally, they were not designed for gait re-education. So here is where the role of evidence-based practice comes, or the evidence-based model comes, and we incorporate this model with the approaches, and that too not, it is not our research. It is the evidence which was given by the researches which were done previously. So I will just talk about 2 slides. What is this model? So as everybody knows, we have 3 components of this model. First, the component is practitioner's individual expertise. Now, this is the expertise which we have gained through our education, through our clinical skills, and through our experience. Like everybody has their own clinical skills, own talents. So this is our own individual expertise. We combine the client's values and expectation. Now, by